Okay.
Monday Night Football, 8:15, Baltimore Ravens at the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, baby.
The two number one seeds in each conference. I love watching these games in the regular season. I almost wish we just waited to see this as a potential Super Bowl matchup, to see it for the first time. But
you think it's like the present is spoiled if we see it first in the regular season?
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, it's like something's going to happen in this game, and if they do make it to the Super Bowl, we're going to say, hey, did they adjust to this? And here's what happened last time. And on the other hand, it would be good to maybe see it fresh as a Super Bowl. But it should be a fun game. Christmas night, Niners favored by 5.5. And I think that just shows just how dominant the 49ers have been, both sides of the ball. The fact that a very good Ravens team is getting 5.5 here in San Francisco.
Yeah, it really is a fairly strong statement in how I think everybody views San Francisco. And it's difficult to argue. I mean, we've been saying for a while, when everybody is healthy, and that's the big thing. I mean, that's relevant to every team in the NFL, but we've seen literally what happens when people are missing for this 49ers team. They go on a 3-game losing skid. But when everybody is healthy, nobody's come close to stopping this team. Like, not even close. And you've got Baltimore, who are not just the other number one seed in the NFL, but Lamar Jackson is probably the closest rival to Brock Purdy in terms of MVP right now, or at least one of the biggest rivals. So you have direct MVP competition. You have number one seed versus number one seed. It's everything you could want in a game this late in the season. And as you say, it's a potential Super Bowl preview. So great matchup. And I honestly... it's a big statement that the man in Vegas has the 49ers as a 5.5-point favorite, but it's hard to argue. I mean, they have been rolling over people.
They have been. Let's start on the 49ers offense side of the ball, going up against this Ravens defense. Ravens are number 2 in EPA per play allowed. Now, one interesting data point here. I'm just off the top of my head. Which of these teams has the 49ers played this year? Top 10 in EPA per play allowed. Well, number 1 is the Browns defense. And that was the worst game the Niners offense had.
Yep.
I think there were circumstances for that. I don't think it was all because of the Browns. I think the Niners played poorly. I think the weather was a little tough, but that was a thing. Number 2 in EPA per play allowed is the Ravens. They haven't played the Jets, haven't played the Dolphins, haven't played the Chiefs. They're number 6, the 49ers. They played the Cowboys, who are number 7 in EPA per play allowed defensively. Niners absolutely crushed them. Didn't play the Saints. They did play the Vikings, who are number 9 in EPA per play allowed. So I guess when we get to the bottom line here, of the Niners' 3 losses, 2 of them came against defenses who rank in the top 10 in EPA per play allowed. And we talk a lot about on this show about how the offense is probably the bigger driver in even defensive success. It's not, nothing's 100%. But it's one of these things where I think the Ravens have the best chance to at least make the windows tighter.
Sure.
For the Niners. But the Niners never have tight web. They have some tight windows, and Brock Purdy's made some great throws, but for the most part, they're going to scheme up some easy stuff too. Can they actually get that against this Ravens defense?
Yeah. I mean, the Ravens, look, we've been talking previously. They have a historically great record against opposing pass offenses this season. Like, they are allowing a ridiculously low yards per attempt figure. They have one of the best pass defenses in the NFL this year. And this is another reason this is such a great matchup. If you look with the PFF, the main account put out a tweet recently that was the passer rating when throwing to the 49ers, sort of big skill position players. They own the number 1 passer rating in the NFL when throwing to any player is 139.8 to Deebo Samuel, right? So number 1, 49ers. They own 4 of the top 15 at any position. So running back, wide receiver, tight end, all put together, 4 of the top 15 are in the 49ers offense, right? Obviously, Brock Purdy being the common denominator then, but the point being, passer rating is it's a team-based stat. It's a pass offense stat. So effectively, it's a stat showing you that this 49ers offense, the main 4 guys, are absolutely cooking opposing teams. And in particular, we know that they roast teams over the middle, right? Linebackers, safeties. Now, that is an area where Baltimore has some strength, right? They've got Kyle Hamilton, this tight end eraser, slot matchup, unusual weapon that can actually, part of the problem matching up with Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle is all of those guys are matchup problems, right? They're big, they're strong, they're fast, they're versatile. They can line up all over the formation, and you can't just track them with like a cornerback. You have to have a versatile player that corresponds to that on the other side of the ball, and most teams don't. The Ravens do. They have two of the best coverage players in the NFL and two of the most versatile in Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith this year. So the Ravens are, I think, unusually well positioned to be able to at least deploy guys that can match up with these people. Now, can they stick with them? Can they match them in the pass concept? And, can they as a unit stay disciplined enough to cover, the plays that are just killing everybody? That's another question. But at least they're starting with a point of saying, okay, we have players that can do this. Now we got to go and execute. Most teams, I think, are going into a game against the 49ers saying, we don't even have players that can do this. How do we get around that and try and stop it? The Ravens at least can start from a point of, we know we have the guys that can do this.
Yeah, I mean, I say that a lot when teams are playing the Niners. I look at their linebackers, and you added Kyle Hamilton in there again as a slot, move around type of player. Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, Kyle Hamilton. Maybe the key to this game, slowing down the 49ers offense. The other part that you've mentioned before is, hope. Maybe it's a prayer, not a strategy, but getting up on the Niners so that they have to, play from behind. The Ravens at least have that ability with Lamar's running ability. I mean, it's really too bad Keaton Mitchell's out for the season because he's such a dynamic runner as a rookie. Blow. But they've got that downhill running attack. They've got Lamar, pretty good offensive line, and the best array of weapons for the 49ers, for the Ravens that they've had. They can win horizontally. They can win vertically. Even without Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely can work the seam. We saw that seam touchdown against the Jags. Can the Ravens put together those 12 to 14 play drives, do it early in the game, and get up 7, get up 10? If it's just 10-0, and maybe make the 49ers get out of their comfort zone. The Niners have lost 3 games, 2 of which were really close, right? They lost to the Browns. They missed a game-winning field goal too. So it's not like they got destroyed by the Browns, but they got slowed down, that offense. Mm-hmm. They lost to the Browns by 2, to the Vikings by 5, both in fourth quarter comeback opportunities for Brock Purdy in that offense where it just didn't work out. Other than that, they've pretty much won every game by 10 plus, 10, 15, 20 points. I mean, they're 1-2 in one-score games. So that's what's going to be interesting here for the Niners. As they get into the playoffs, they're probably not going to kill everybody again. I don't know if they're going to kill the Cowboys and the Eagles like they did in the regular season. Watching the Niners play in a close game here, and the Ravens have the ability they keep everything close, right? The Ravens have led in every game in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter and still managed to lose 3 of them. But they've been in every single game. So I think the Ravens will still be able to at least keep this close.
The other thing I think that is probably notable is, Kyle Shanahan's offense, the 49ers offense, has been just steamrolling everything. It's been a cheat code against everything. Remember we talked previously in the show about how that collection of Shanahan coaches, those disciples, all of them sort of collectively went and deliberately put themselves next to Vic Fangio type defensive schemes because those were the defenses that were giving them the most problems, right? They were able to go and roast Pete Carroll disciple cover 3 guys, right? Yeah. They knew how that worked. They just ripped that defense to shreds. But a Vic Fangio defense were the ones that were giving them problems. So you get Mike McDaniel going out there and hiring Vic Fangio specifically to try and practice against that and make sure that they're able to beat those defenses as well. I kind of feel like that's had so much success as a strategy that their offense actually carves those defenses up now. And if you look at the 49ers this year, the defenses that have caused them the most problems have been the ones that are antithetical to the Vic Fangio type schemes. Brian Flores' defense has no relation whatsoever to a Vic Fangio style defense. And that's the game. The Minnesota game is the one game, I think, this year where the 49ers offensive struggles were most connected to being out-coached, right? Where the defense was showing them things that they did not expect or had no answer for, and they put the ball in weird places and harm's way and those kinds of things. The Baltimore defense is not a Vic Fangio type of defense. It's another one of these I don't want to say unique, but like different defenses. It's not like the cookie cutter scheme that everybody is using. It's a different scheme. And I think you can say that about all the defenses that this 49ers offense has relatively struggled against. It's been Jim Schwartz. It's been Brian Flores. It's been the unusual ones. It's not been the ones that they're used to.
I don't know if it matters either, but the Ravens played the Texans in week 1. It was week 1 for Bobby Slowick and for C.J. Stroud, his debut. They did a really nice job against that Texans offense, same scheme. It is interesting, too. The Ravens are going to play the Niners and the Dolphins, the same system, Shanahan and McDaniel, within 6 days of each other here in massive games. What a stretch here to finish the season for the Ravens. That Jags game last week, but now at San Francisco and then to Miami to battle pretty much for the number 1 seed, with the number 1 seed on the line on New Year's Eve. So, man, it's going to be some great football. 5.5, man. Is there anything else you want to add in this matchup? I feel like we could talk about it for hours, but 5.5, San Francisco's favored. Is that too much?
I mean, I kind of feel like it's legit when you look at what they've been doing, but I am going to go with Baltimore to cover it.
Okay.
So
you and I are leaning the same way here. As I talk through it, I think Baltimore's going to keep I think it's going to be a close game.
I think it's a fair number, but I do think that the Ravens can keep it close.
One of the fun things about football too, Sam, is you just never know how the game flow is going to go.
Right.
And that old adage, like if you play the game 10 times, what would happen? If you play the game 10 times, I could see the Niners winning, 7 of them, right? But if Baltimore gets the game flow in their favor early, I could see them, maybe putting that pressure on the Niners to execute and be perfect. And if the Niners just miss a couple throws here and there, Ravens could be able to pull the upset here.
It's like that, it's like that idea that we've been talking about for a while. This concept of taking the ball first, trying to force the 49ers into a situation where they are playing behind. I think that's a real fear for them. I do think that is a potential weakness to this offense if the game flow gets out of their control. But given how good their defense is, which is something we barely mentioned, so far, and how good the offense is and the fact that they tend to score right away, it's really difficult to put them in that situation. I mean, the Cardinals tried it last week, right? They went up, scored a touchdown, the 49ers just answered. And then the Cardinals' second shot at it, they threw a pick six, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden going from, well, we almost got them into a hole, went from they're ahead and we're screwed. I think it's a live threat. If you run up against a good team and they can get the first 2 scores, I think that does potentially change the whole dynamic with this 49ers team.
One last thing, we should mention Brock Purdy. He's since the bye, since that Vikings loss, passer ratings 138, number 1 PFF grade, also since that time. And again, he's playing better in addition to getting the help from the playmakers and from the offense. That's why the Niners look like a juggernaut. Unless the Ravens completely lay an egg here, if the Niners are going to win, I think we're going to see 3 or 4 big-time throws from Brock Purdy. We're going to need to see 3 or 4 of those, crazy anticipation, sideline throws that he makes or outside of structure plays that he's made. If he does that, he'll probably solidify that MVP case here. I think I'd be fine with Brock Purdy winning MVP at this point. I'm good with it because he's playing better now. It's not just he's sitting there with a 70 PFF grade and the stats are out of this world. He is actually playing better and elevating this offense beyond what it was before. So there's this element of did he step into an offense that was already successful? Yes. But to take an offense that has Shanahan has gone to the NFC Championship every year he's had his starting quarterback, and one year where he had Purdy come in. To come in and make that team better, Purdy's done that. There's value in that. Mm-hmm. Just making the already good or very good great right now. Obviously, there's a ton of value in that, and I think Purdy has been the facilitator there. So I think we'll be tested here, though, is the point in this Ravens game. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, he's probably not going to end the season as the number 1 quarterback in PFF grade, but it's actually a possibility now. I mean, he's climbed his way up to 5th in the rankings based off this play, and as the season has gone on, he's only sort of 5 grading points behind Josh Allen at number 1. If he has 3-4 more games to end the season the same way, I mean, he could get to that number 1 spot. And when you pair that with the stats that if you didn't know any of the context stuff, if you didn't know George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Kyle Shanahan and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's you can only hold that against him to a certain degree. Like, I think it's fair to say, hey, what would it look like if, what would Dak Prescott look like in this offense, right? Or any other quarterback. I think that's a fair argument to be making. But you also have to sort of say, well, what would have happened in previous MVP campaigns if you took away like all of that, if you invalidated those MVP awards because Peyton Manning had Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison and Dallas Clark and a good offensive line and a good coordinator. Like, these are things that happen in seasons.
I mean, even Aaron Rodgers in 2021 wasn't our highest graded quarterback. I think he was third.
Right.
It wasn't actually all that close, but he had the best stats in touchdown to interception ratio and a lot of the things that the voters would look at. So again, I think it depends on how you're looking at Purdy and from a value standpoint. I'll say this, it's the highest grade we've seen for a Shanahan quarterback since Matt Ryan in 2016. And if you start looking at those numbers, every time Shanahan has a QB grade above 80, we'll say, they break the league.
Right.
The league gets broken statistically, and that's what's happening this year. All right. All that said, you're going Baltimore. Mm-hmm. The more I talked about it, I said I'll take Baltimore as well to cover the 5.5. I think they'll keep it close enough.